DW Africa Link.
In Zambia, an emerging financial crisis is quietly unfolding, with civil servants, those entrusted to keep the country running, caught at its core. Many are now overwhelmed by debt, prompting urgent warnings from the nation's central bank that the situation threatens the stability of Zambia's entire financial sector. The central bank sounded the alarm. Excessive borrowing from multiple lenders and widespread loan defaults among civil servants are quietly steering the sector toward disaster. In effect, those meant to serve the nation are inadvertently exacerbating its financial woes. As elections approach, the question looms: will civil servant debt become a pivotal political issue? That's what we'll explore next. Welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter across Africa. I'm Lucy Riley, your host for today.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Zambia's civil service stands as one of the country's largest employers, with its wage bill already putting substantial pressure on public finances. Yet, it's not only the salaries that strain the treasury, it's also mounting debt. Many civil servants are taking out several loans at once, often for non-essential expenses, critics argue. When repayments falter, the impact extends beyond the individual, affecting pension funds, financial institutions, and ultimately every Zambian reliant on a stable state. Now that Zambia is approaching another election, some politicians, including opposition members, are advocating the return of debt relief. This poses a key political dilemma for President Hakainde's government. Can it resist growing calls to repeat a policy it once condemned as opportunistic? Joining me is Shadrach Lusambo, a financial analyst, and DW's Glory Mushinge in Lusaka, who has been following this story closely on the ground. Glory, this issue has gained national attention after the Bank of Zambia raised the alarm. What has been the reaction from ordinary Zambians and from the civil servants themselves?
Actually, there are some trade unions that have been requesting for the reintroduction of the debt swap. A number of them. It's just that now I can't get the book up, but even the trade unions like the Zambia Congress of Trade Unions have requested to sit down with the government to negotiate ways in which they could get these civil servants out of debt. And a number of them have reportedly requested for the reintroduction of the debt swap. And of course, there are those citizens who are saying the whole financial system needs an overhaul. They need to cap the interest rates. They need to find better ways of regulating how they give these civil servants the loans.
As the elections approach, how are government officials handling this issue publicly? I mean, how have they been reacting?
For them, it's more about trying to negotiate interests rather than going for this debt swap. And I think they're saying they're looking into the matter, but so far I'm not hearing so much coming through in terms of like immediate solutions.
Shadrach, I'll bring you in here. I was reading a blog and some of the comment sections had mixed views. I mean, some were saying that civil servants are hounded by microfinance firms and create this perception that, loans are risk-free because they can't lose their jobs. And then there are other people who are also saying that interest rates are just crazy. And someone else actually talked about the cost of living, which is just unbearable. Look, I mean, is this a wages problem? Is this a cost of living problem? Or is this really something to do with deeper governance failures? And exactly how is this individual debt becoming a systemic crisis in Zambia, Shadrach?
Well, thank you very much for that question. First of all, I think I would be very, very careful in framing this as systemic governance failure, partly because to begin with, the government are the ones who've come on board to sound the alarm and say, you know what, we are going to put stiff measures for financial institutions who are not following the required debt thresholds when giving out loans. So clearly the government is doing something about it. But again, if you think about it, is the issue, yes, civil servants might be in debt, but not because they love to borrow money. sometimes could be because of they want to solve a financial problem. So yes, when you say could this be that the wages are not enough? I wouldn't really say the wages are not enough, partly because number one, the financial institutions themselves, they have a role to play. What we are seeing is a situation where financial institutions are going beyond what has been prescribed in their policies to give out loans and just give somebody loans simply because they've got a pay slip. So yes, civil servants are an easy target because of job security, but that is not the correct position to say they are only borrowing because of job security, but partly because of the problem that they may be going through. Maybe the cost of living, yes, might contribute, but also sometimes just lack of financial literacy. When money is available, people just want to get the money. So those might be the issues we should be able to also maybe look at. But in terms of government failure, I wouldn't really frame it like that, because I feel the government has done a fantastic job in raising awareness, financial literacy, but also sounding an alarm to financial institutions to say, not stop doing what you're doing, follow the rules. If you are found wanting, you're on your own, we'll put you to task. So I think that has been very clear in terms of the government stance.
So are you saying that this is really a problem of financial literacy among the civil servants in Zambia?
So yes, financial literacy is an issue because most of them don't even understand the true cost of debt. Financial institutions may provide a bit of some financial, counseling here and there when giving out a loan, but they don't do enough. So what we need is a robust financial literacy system that helps civil servants understand their rights, understand the do's and the don'ts before getting a loan. So yes, that is contributing, but also just social pressure. Social pressure has also contributed to this issue. Social pressure, people just want to perhaps keep up an appearance. But also if you look at civil servants, like I said earlier, they are an easy target because of the job security. So financial institutions usually target civil servants. Hey, could you come and get a loan? We'll give it to you, no collateral needed, just give us your pay slip. So that also contributes. So I feel like it's more of a structural issue than it is a governance issue, partly because there's so much easy access to loans on the part of financial institutions, whether it's banks, microfin, pay slip lenders, there's just too much easy access to loans. I think that is also contributing. We need to restrict access to loans so that people who are given loans really undergo a rigorous test to see whether or not they can afford to pay back the money.
Now, listen, the previous government introduced a debt swap before the 2021 elections, which was widely condemned as political opportunism. Now, ahead of another election, similar proposals are being floated. How do you break the cycle where every election becomes an opportunity for, quick political fixes rather than structural solutions?
The government position is that they are trying to ensure that the civil servants are not exploited. The financial institutions do not take advantage of the financial illiteracy of some of them who may be in the civil service. So the debt swap issue is not even a question. I don't think it's even on the table. We've not received any official communication from the Bank of Zambia or the government to say this is really an issue, because it was a disaster in the first place. It was condemned, and I don't think that it would be logical to bring it up. But I do say we have in an election year. I think you agree with me that in every democracy, when it's election time, almost every government, they have this pressure because of social commentators having these narratives, even just the economic pressures. They may put pressure on the government to want to spend money which might not be fiscally sound, but just to be able to reduce the heat from the public perception. So yes, we may see a situation where perhaps maybe some spending might be made just to fix a short-term problem, but that has not really been an issue as of now. Though that is possible, I think for every government, when you have elections, be it in America, in Africa, governments tend to spend on things that may not be fiscally sound. It happens all the time. So it's not really a taboo if that thing happens even in Zambia.
I mean, look, the Bank of Zambia itself has raised the alarm that this is a problem. But then why does this problem keep resurfacing? I mean, what does that pattern tell us about whether Zambia is actually willing to fix the root cause or is doing something about it, Shadrach?
Well, the fact that the Bank of Zambia is sounding an alarm, it means they're doing something about it. They could have hidden the statistics. They're the ones who do the statistics. They're the ones who give us the information. So the fact that they came on board and say, hey, we are not seeing a trend where a lot of civil servants are being exploited. Here's the position in our country. Our debt rules are that no individual should be able to be given above the required debt service ratio. Right now, what we have is a 40% debt service ratio as a requirement. So what we are seeing is dishonesty, number one, on the part of the microfinancial institutions, because They are willing to give somebody money so long they have a pay slip. Now, sometimes you find that somebody who has already exhausted their debt service ratio goes to a private microfinance and they are given a loan. And sometimes those loans don't even show on the pay slips. So it had to take the Bank of Zambia a lot of audit, a lot of work to uncover this irregularity. So it's not really that the Bank of Zambia, the government has failed to do anything about it. It is them who undertook an audit to ensure that these irregularities are brought to the fore, and microfinance, banks, microlenders are all notified. If you are found wanting, you are going to be in trouble. So that is a very good thing. But also we have seen that if you look at the debt issue in itself, it is simply a symptom. It is not really the problem. It is a symptom of a deeper economic issue, especially on the household level. Yes, we know that government has got a role to play in creating jobs, providing opportunities, providing oversight, but at the same time, we in the public service should also be able to step up and create jobs. When people are getting loans, we have to look at it in all this, not just to look at governance aspect, but also from the social aspect. What is the major driving factor of people borrowing? Like you said, a rising cost of living. So sometimes you find that the rate at which the costs are rising and the salaries are rising, there's a mismatch, both for the government and for the private sector. So we have to work together with the government and the private sector to see how do we balance these trends so that the salaries, the cost of living are matching where we are. So it's really a very critical issue, but hopefully we are getting somewhere.
All right, we'll get back to some of those solutions later. But Glory, what is actually behind this overborrowing, do you think? I mean, are what critics saying right, that much of it is driven by, lifestyle spending and easy access to credit, or is there more to it?
There is a perception, it's a general perception that public workers borrow to fund lavish lifestyles, but many economists and union representatives beg to disagree. They argue that most do it simply to survive and pay for basic needs like food, as well as school and university fees for their children, etc. Some civil servants have it so bad that they even bypass the 40% debt limit that is provided for by law. That's that the loan deductions cannot exceed 40% of their salary. So they do that by taking multiple off-payroll loans, borrowing from unregulated microlenders, and participating in informal village banking. Some do it by misrepresenting their financial situation and deliberately failing to disclose existing obligations to different lenders.
I mean, thanks for painting that picture for us, Glory. And I know that you are alluding to this just before we got started. But, like you've mentioned, some politicians, including those opposition voices, are calling for, a return to debt relief schemes. How is President Hakainde's government responding to these calls, both from the opposition, from the trade unions? And is there a sense that this could become a defining issue in the election?
I feel there's a lot going on in the country at the moment to tackle, such that some issues get eclipsed by others. And I do know that the government does declare a commitment to helping the cause for civil servants, not only civil servants, because the public service is one of the biggest employers. It's not the biggest employers because most people are employed in the private sector. So the government does tend to talk about creating favorable policies for both these sectors, not necessarily just concentrating on one.
Shadrach, let's talk solutions. Beyond debt swaps and political fixes, what does a sustainable solution actually look like? And is there a political will in Zambia to deliver it?
I think there are 5 things that I think we should be able to do. I would recommend 5 things. Number 1, I think we need to strengthen financial literacy. We have a financial literacy issue in Zambia. And also, we need to strengthen debt management trainings and education in Zambia. I think we're having a problem here. It would interest you to know that a lot of people are in debt. Actually, don't even know the amount of interest they pay because people go to the banks, microfinance, and get these quick loans from microfinance without reading the loan contract. So we need to strengthen financial literacy. That is a key issue. Secondly, I think we should be able to improve affordability. When we say affordability assessment, we mean before somebody gets a loan, it's very important that we assess whether or not this person will be able to pay back the loan and how will their financial health be after the loan. Both the lenders, the microfinance, the banks, and the borrowers, we have a shared responsibility to ensure that when you are going to apply for a loan, you are honest enough to ensure that the loan does not leave you crippled and looking for more loans to survive. If you look at the way things are right now, like we mentioned earlier, the required debt service ratio is 40%. But you find the situation where somebody has gone to 5 different microfinance and they are getting loans from all of them, which is maybe paying 80% of the side going to debt service, which is not okay. Why is this happening? It's happening because of dishonesty, both on the part of the borrower, but also on the part of the lender not being able to follow the required set rules and regulations. So the third issue is also to look at in terms of solutions. I think we need to enhance transparency around interest and total borrowing costs. Lots of people don't understand the true cost of debt. When they go to the bank to borrow money and then the loan can't be liquidated easily, they are surprised. They say, hey, I've been paying this loan for the past 7 years. How come I'm not able to liquidate the loan? So if we can enhance transparency both for the lenders and also for the borrowers to be very, very much helpful to ensure whoever borrows money, at least there's a track record to see. Of course, we've got the credit bureaus in Zambia, but I think we can reinforce the scope of the work that they do to ensure that these things don't happen. If you look at the fourth issue, I would really suggest is that we can be able to maybe strengthen credit information sharing to prevent remote borrowing, because now there's lack of information in terms of the credit information. Those credit bureaus should be able to be sharing information publicly of people who owe money, and those people don't owe money. But if that data is not readily available, it makes it difficult for local lenders, international lenders to be able to understand the situation that is current at hand. And finally, I think that maybe we need to encourage a culture of saving and investing. When people borrow money, I followed Glory closely when she said lots of people, they borrow to survive. Well, there are some, may not be completely the full story, partially because, as a financial analyst, I'm going to tell you this. I've dealt with debt issue for the past 10 years. And over the 10 years of dealing with debt, I can tell you with absolute certainty that a lot of people borrow money, just a social issue. A majority of them is not even about the cost of living. It is just wanting to buy a new iPhone, wanting to buy a new phone on the market, wanting to buy a car, wanting to go to an event. People borrow for very, very weird things. And over the 10 years, I've started discussing debt and educating the public about debt, be it in Zambia or abroad. I've seen this trend across African countries also just developing. People just borrow to just finance a lifestyle, keeping up appearances, because now we have these highlight reels on social media, Instagram. People want to look successful when they are not. So yes, there may be a bit of borrowing because of the cost of living rising, but the deeper issue is also just social issue, social pressure, appearances, even just borrowing for some. I'm going to give an example. In 2024, 2023, 2024, the government of Zambia had introduced something called partial withdrawal for NAPSA. Now, what NAPSA did, they were able to give money to certain civil servants, certain people were qualifying. The majority of our people bought cars. They bought iPhones. They bought stuffs that were not being used for production. So I think the deeper issue is that we need to be more productive as a people. When we get a loan, what are we actually using that loan for? Is it just for buying an iPhone, or is it to sustain a cost of living? If you look at the budgets, the average salaries for Zambia and the cost of living, you see that the average salary for Zambia and the cost of rent in most cases, there's no that much big difference. So clearly people can survive on a salary from the government. Most of them are getting between 8,000 and 15,000, which is, to be fair, enough to sustain a household. But the issue that we have that our people, they want a lifestyle they can't afford. I think that is one of the biggest issues. And I'm sad to say this because I'm going to be crucified for this. But from the 10 years of experience, it's not even about the cost of living. It is just about wanting to live a life you can't afford in most cases. But of course, there's a bit of cost of living. There's a bit of financial literacy. There's a bit of social pressure, economic pressure. But the deeper issue is just the spending behavior and patterns of our people.
Very, very interesting. I mean, you've given us concrete, steps forward that even the country can take and even individuals in Zambia can take. But Shadrack, I wonder, and as we come to a close, are there examples of other African countries that are effectively managing their debt situation that you can mention, and what are they doing right?
Well, for starters, the debt issue that we have in Zambia, it regards civil servants. It is not like Zambia is in a catastrophic debt problem right now. It is a certain group of civil servants who are highly indebted, not that everyone is in debt. So we want to be very careful when we talk about how civil servants are in debt, because I've heard politicians, especially, they want to drive a narrative that, you know what, the situation is so bad. Yes, people are in debt, but if you look at the public service, how they employ people, and the private sector has got more employees than the public sector. So it's not really that is so bad. But coming back to your question, if you go to countries such as Ghana, for example, countries such as Nigeria, Tanzania, the way they've handled their debt issue is that I think they've reinforced their regulations. Before you can actually borrow, there's a rigorous process you have to go through to ensure you can actually pay back the loan. In fact, in Tanzania, for you to borrow money, it must be most of the time for production, not for personal loans. Personal loans are very stringent in certain jurisdictions. In our country, personal loans are more easily accessible. Like Glory was saying, I do agree with her when she says, in Zambia, you don't need collateral to get a loan if you're a civil servant. All you have to do is show your payslip and that's it. Now, what's sad is this. I'm sure Glory will agree with me that anybody can walk into a microfinance with a payslip, and within 10 minutes, they walk out with money. They've got a loan. So that is where we're having a problem. So when Glory was saying we have an access issue, I do agree with that, because that is where we need to, I think, strengthen the laws and the regulations. Say, hey, before somebody gets a loan, can we try to also do an interrogation? Why are you going to get a loan? Both the lender and the borrower, we have a responsibility to ensure we don't remain handicapped. Because now if you borrow from this institution, if you think about it, I feel like there's no limit on how many institutions somebody can get money. I saw a payslip just 2 weeks ago of somebody who had over 6 financial institutions deducting money from their salary. And that is now a policy issue, I think. So if we can restrict that and copy the way Tanzania has done it, before they give you a loan, they have to ensure you have a business, they have to check your cash flows. And what's fun is that these things are there on paper, loan requirements. The issue that maybe we're missing, where we need to improve, is reinforcement. We need to enforce these laws so that the institutions that give out money, the borrowers, we both abide by these laws. It is going to help a lot. Right now, it doesn't look so good.
Glory Mushinge and Shadrach Lusambo, thank you very much for your input today.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
To understand how ordinary Zambians are feeling about this crisis and what they think should be done, let's hear some voices from the ground.
I think easy access to credit can sometimes encourage a cycle of repeated borrowing that becomes difficult to escape. And then regarding a government bailout using taxpayers' money, I do not believe that should be the first option. Borrowing is ultimately a personal financial commitment, and using public funds to settle private debts could, potentially raise concerns about fairness and accountability.
The over-borrowing by civil servants is caused by the high cost of living, whereby you find that you have worked for so many years, but you can't achieve anything big. Because I want to live a good life, so I borrowed money to buy land. Now I can't finish building my house because the cost of living is too high. You find that maybe I need more money. I go for a top-up.
Some people get loans to get, household goods, to get a 70-inch TV, to get a double-door fridge. And then, that's culture continues. They keep on borrowing because they've normalized borrowing. Everything that they want, they get a loan. And that is the reason why now people are failing to pay.
That brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you for listening. Your voices matter. What do you think Zambia should do to break this debt cycle? Share your solutions and join the debate. What specific steps do you believe are needed now? Share your thoughts with us on Facebook and TikTok at DW Africa. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. I'm Lucy Riley. Bye for now.
DW. Made for minds.